Hello, and welcome to the Security Weekly News. It's episode 346. I'm Doug White, and it is the week of 3 December 2023. Today we got for you surprising cam nudes, Staples, Turtle, Apple, 23andme, P2Pinfect, Sellafield, Gmail, Jason Wood, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. AI, accelerated cloud adoption, and hybrid work are fundamentally shifting how business gets done. The old way of securing your people, apps, and data doesn't work and scale anymore. To stay ahead, today's organizations need to reimagine their security and networking infrastructure with a cloud-first, unified SASE architecture. Join Palo Alto Networks and leading technologists from across the globe for SASE Converge 2023, a two-day virtual experience, November 15th and 16th, revealing how SASE powered by advanced AI can drive better security and networking outcomes. Register today at securityweekly.com/Palo Alto.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Yay! Welcome to the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Now, don't forget, the Security Weekly Holiday Show is tomorrow. I mean, the infamous, or riot, or whatever you want to call it, parole violation. So be sure and be here to check it out. See Uncle Paul drink too much Sambuca, rant about how Santa's elves are all communists who are working to overthrow the DMV and replace it with a Politburo, and then yak something up that looks like black oil all over your cousin Alma, and other holiday hijinks. So it'll be like any family festival you've ever been to, right? Yeah. So be sure and check that out tomorrow. Staples, that place you go when you need new two-ring legal binders. Yeah, I mean, it's like the ultimate, nerdy kind of store. My daughter used to like to go there when she was a little kid. I was like, what? Like, her friends are going, can we go to the zoo? My daughter's like, can we go to the Staples and sit in the chairs? I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But anyway, Staples confirmed on Friday that some of its systems had to be taken offline due to ransomware. The nationwide chain, which is based in Framingham, Massachusetts, which is not that far from here, had posted this note on their site. It said, Staples recently identified a cybersecurity risk. Okay, there's like number one vague statement of all time. We took proactive steps in an effort to mitigate the impact and protect customer data. Okay, extremely vague statement number two. Our prompt efforts caused a temporary disruption to the Staples.com processing and delivering capabilities, as well as to our communication channels and customer service lines. All right. So, yeah. Now, that was about all that you got. So I saw this headline everywhere. Everybody was saying it sounds like a ransomware attack, smells like a ransomware attack, but I don't know. So they didn't really provide any other information in this release. So yeah, but if you're working with Staples or you are dealing with them, you might expect problems. Speaking of ransomware, Patrick Wardle conducted an in-depth analysis of a new ransomware called Turtle. And Turtle is a ransomware that runs on Mac OS, which is the only thing that sets it apart, I guess, from other stuff. The analysis says that Turtle is unsophisticated, but it is indicative that attackers are interested in Mac OS. There are versions of Turtle now available for Windows and Linux. The malware was written in Go. And Turtle is the name that was given the app by the coder that wrote it, apparently, since they found strings in the binary that had the word turtle, I guess, or maybe it was in Chinese. I'm not sure. They didn't really say, what that was or why or who named it. But currently, the ransomware, they said, does not appear to pose a major threat to Mac OS, as the file itself is signed with an ad hoc signature, which what that means is they didn't use a notarized certificate to sign the app by Apple. So that means that you can install it, but it's immediately going to get blocked by Gatekeeper unless you've done that away. But of course, if you deploy it yourself, by clicking on it or allowing it to run, or you have an exploit allows it to run, then, it would be a problem. Wordle did say that there were strings found in Chinese. I knew that was in a story somewhere. So while maybe it's not a huge threat, it does mean that the old apple's not a target adage is just an old adage that is not true, that most of us knew already. And it also means that, you should never, ever start feeling that safe. And it also means Turtle may get developed a lot more and in the short run, and they may eventually get a signature or something. Who knows? But be vigilant. Don't use security through obscurity. Bad idea. And speaking of Apple, they did patch 2.0 days this week in their WebKit browser engine. I think they issued the patch last week. Apple released these very fast after they were notified about the exploits, but they said that they were aware of the flaws being exploited on devices that were running iOS versions prior to 16.7.1. And that version was released on the 10th of October, although most, current devices are running the 17 series. So this is probably on older devices, but that did 16.7.1 came out on 10 October, and they said things before that. WebKit is an open source browser engine, if you aren't familiar with it, that Apple developed, and they use it in just about everything. And so, it's like Chromium essentially, but they use it in Apple products like Safari and Apple Mail and App Store and all the other Mac, iOS, and Linux apps and so forth. So this thing is embedded a lot of places. The two vulnerabilities can allow attacks which would access sensitive information on your device. One of them is an out-of-bounds read flaw that would allow the disclosure of sensitive information. So I'm guessing, it didn't have the grim details of this, but I'm guessing that that's kind of a, skip out of the buffer kind of thing and grab stuff from other fields. But it would allow them to disclose sensitive information while web content was being processed. And the second one was could allow arbitrary code execution due to a memory corruption vulnerability. So both are very dangerous. The issue was reported to Apple by Google Tag. So, patch up all your Apple stuff or get iPwned. Copyright. But anyway, sorry, I'm not allowed by law to make puns within 100 meters of a school. So if you're at a school, just, please don't call that in. No, that would be bad. 23andme, despite the name, which sounds like, I don't know, it always sounds to me like something else. I won't get into what it sounds like. But 23andme is a company that collects DNA information about you after you spit in a test tube and send it in. And you're supposed to spit in it. Don't do other stuff. Yeah, I had somebody ask me that. And it was like, no, you just read the instructions. Yeah, don't. Yeah, I don't know what you're planning, but don't do it. Just spit. But anyway, the company reported that nearly 7 million people have had their data leaked in an incident that occurred in October. Most of the data, they said, was scraped from the DNA relatives feature of the site. And if you don't know what that is, I've not ever used this site, but I looked it up. And basically what it is like you send in your spit, they do a DNA analysis of it, and then do genetic matching of you to other people. So they suddenly tell you, oh, did you know you were related to this guy named Sid that lives across town? You guys should get together. And then you find out it's like, he's a serial cannibal or something. Yeah, that kind of fun stuff. But the attackers used stolen credentials to directly access about 14,000 accounts. So they just logged into them. So then that leak included names, ancestry reports, and health-related information. So, a lot of valuable stuff there. The site then said that 5.5 million users had their DNA relatives profiles leaked, with another 1.4 million users having their family tree profiles exposed. Because I presume, and like I said, I've not used this site, I presume that it's one of those things where you can share information, just like on all social media, where you say, I'm happy to share my genetic profile. I'm happy to share all my information, or only with friends, or only with family members, or whatever. Well, a user named Gollum shared a bunch of this data on a hacker forum. And yeah, it's a cool name. But the information there was focused on 1 million Ashkenazi Jewish users and 300,000 Chinese users on the 1st of October. I guess I'm safe. Oh, wait. There were 4.1 million profiles of British and German customers. That gets me. I think that pretty much covers my ancestry, although maybe not. But Gollum claims to have access to the data from more than 7 million 23andme users. Some of the health data included information about predisposition to type 2 diabetes and Parkinson's disease and so forth. I think there's an Ethan Hawke movie about this, but they also had genetic markers for all kinds of other diseases like Parkinson's and stuff like that. The company said they have temporarily disabled some of the features in the DNA relatives tool. Hopefully that one where I figured out just how much my great-great-grandma got around. Damn, Amanda. And don't even get me started on that Swedish milkman and how I just suddenly happened to realize in the genetic test that I have like a 5% Swede in me. Yeah, there's so many jokes I could make, but I'm not. And I still don't look like Alexander Skarsgård, so I don't know what happened. But they said they were working to remove the leaked data. I don't know how you do that, but they were notifying all the people affected. Damn, Amanda. But yeah. P2Pinfect is a Rust-based malware which acts as a botnet agent and connects infected hosts in a peer-to-peer topology. It's kind of like The Last of Us for a lot of, for IoT devices. And then the malware's been apparently exploiting Redis servers, which is common, as an initial access point. Cato Security said that it is targeting embedded IoT devices on 32-bit MIPS processors. And if you don't know what that means, MIPS is an alternative architecture that has been used, for a long, long time. But 32-bit MIPS processors, and they will try to brute force these devices. So the malware itself is trying to break into these things, I think over SSH. They went on to say that the targeting of MIPS is due to it being able to run Redis server on those devices via a project by OpenWRT, which if you're not familiar with or it may be OpenWrite, I've never known how to say it, but OpenWRT is an open source router firmware project, which is really cool if you're interested in such things. And I have used that before. But since OpenWRT supports MIPS, and while past botnets like Mirai really had a lot of success targeting MIPS, well, why not target MIPS? I mean, like I said, if you don't know, MIPS processors are widely used in IoT. I mean, they're small, they don't use a lot of power, so they're really handy things. And there's just a lot of them out there. And of course, that attracts botnet people. And, they're just sitting there. There's all these IoT devices just sitting there watching the people steal your new PS5 from your front porch or setting the temperature of the classroom to, 109 Fahrenheit or whatever. But it's a big opportunity for botnet people to take over these clouds of IoT devices. And of course, P2Pinfect is a malware that can run on a lot of different IoT devices, and it can create its own mesh. So it's a worm of sorts, and it starts trying to spread using a P2P mesh in these IoT networks. So if you are a commercial customer and you've got thousands of actuators that are all running some kind of IoT that's running 32-bit MIPS, which is certainly possible, yeah, this could be a big problem. And, you have to sort of eventually burn the whole thing with fire to get rid of it. I mean, have you seen the thing? The one with John Carpenter directing and Kurt Russell. Yeah. And Wilford Brimley suspends worrying about his diabetes for a little bit and turns into like a cool lobster thing. Yeah, like that. So isolate those IoT VLANs and keep an eye on them, or you may walk into the warehouse one day and meet, a cat crossed with an octopus telling you about diabetes. Yeah, do yourself a favor. Rewatch The Thing. Not the really old one or the new one, the one from 1982. That's the one. Awesome pre-CGI, very Lovecraftian, cool movie. I really like it a lot. And it ends up with people sitting around drinking whiskey in the snow. It's like, what's not to like? All right. Sorry, spoiler alert. But the UK government issued a strongly worded denial of a report that said that the Sellafield nuclear complex, where you can soak up some rays while gazing across the strait at the Isle of Man, if you've ever been to Cumbria. But basically a report which appeared in The Guardian said that the power plant was hacked by cyber groups closely linked to Russia and China, with the infection first detected in 2015, but it may have been there for years. Now, the report claims that sleeper malware was embedded in unspecified systems which could compromise info on movement of nuclear materials and matter related to safety. Yeah, they don't usually generally advertise that truckload of nuclear fuel rods that's driving through Main Street. I mean, and it is happening, mind you, but that truck that says organic produce on it, yeah, don't believe it. Of course, now I just started a conspiracy. Sorry, organic food truck people, but the reply basically says, from Sellafield says, All of our systems and servers have multiple layers of protection, and critical networks that enable us to operate safely are isolated from our general IT network, which means an attack on our IT system would not penetrate these. And I have to say, and I worked at a lab where they had nuclear reactors, and they were very, very, and this was long ago, they were very, very tight about access to anything involving those reactors or their fuel or the storage of the fuel or the waste or anything else. It was pre-internet, but still, they were very, very strict about even paper documents. Now, Sellafield has always been controversial, and The Guardian doesn't like them at all. I mean, if you go read Guardian articles about Sellafield, they have always been, going on about this place, and they've revealed all kinds of things. And I'm not saying it's true or it's false. They were talking about, radioactive waste ponds and all this kind of stuff. And we've all seen those kind of articles. And of course, Sellafield has had radioactive leaks and all kinds of other problems. It's a very old facility. It's been there a long time. And The Guardian doesn't like it. And they definitely report on a lot of dangerous things there. So, you can read that. The whole site, which is in Cumbria, like a lot of those old sites, is rather dangerous. And it was described by The Guardian again as one of the highest hazard nuclear facilities in the UK due to leaking radioactive water into the ground in the 1970s and on and on and on. And I will say they were pretty slap happy with nuclear back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I'm telling you, I've seen some things, and it was some scary things. Maybe it's conspiracy day. I don't know. But if I told you about them, we'd have to irradiate you and then put you on an underground train car and bury you. Yeah, that kind of stuff. All right. A new update on the Google security blog listed a new upgrade to the Gmail spam filters, which was described as, quote, one of the largest defensive upgrades in recent years. This referred to a new text classification system, which is called RETVEC, or Resilient and Efficient Text Vectorizer. Wow, it must be the same people that named drugs. Optimaramam used to be called Miramac, and you're like, why even change the name? Whatever. But Google says that RETVEC can understand adversarial text manipulation. I was very interested in this story when I saw this headline. What that all means is that special characters, and we've talked a lot about this kind of stuff, whether it was puny code, typo squatting, all these kind of things. It means that special characters like emojis, typos, and other weird things that machines often struggle with, well, so do humans, mind you, RETVEC can actually see them, apparently. So RETVEC works a lot like how humans read, using a TensorFlow model that uses visual similarity to identify what words mean instead of their actual character content. So this means, like, if you see the word CAT in English, you have an image of a cat. Instead of just seeing these individual letters, C-A-T, and you read really fast like that. But apparently this thing looks at it and looks at the context of it. So if there's strange letters or strange appearances in the word cat, it's sort of seeing beyond what you see. And you see cat when you thought you said cat, but it really said C-A with umlauts T or something. It notices that kind of thing. So RETVEC has already been rolled out to Gmail accounts after a year of testing. I didn't really see any option to set it up or do anything special with it, but I am going to look at it more. I just saw this story this morning. Well, one of the last practitioners, he made a fortune leeching the stars. His bloodletting can reputedly prolong youth, cure headaches, and remove warts. The logo, the title, It's a Little Blood, is well known from Los Angeles to Paris. Now, what he does with the blood, who knows? But please welcome master phlebotomist to the stars, Jason Wood.
Hey, you never know. I mean, you got all kinds of innovations in bloodletting still happening out there.
It's an always evolving field.
Always. Long honored history at that. So this story is actually kind of like Doug's, covering staples and wonky incident notifications. Back on November 22nd, which was the day before Thanksgiving here in the U.S., New Relic published a very, very brief bulletin that they had experienced a security incident. They're working with third-party experts to deal with it. And there you go. That was the whole notification. So, anybody that read that, happened to catch it on Wednesday before Thanksgiving here in the U.S., probably had a little extra indigestion to go with the usual overeating and stuff like that. But it basically said, hey, if you're a customer, you don't need to do anything. We'll let you know. Don't call us. We'll call you, is the tone that it had. And I saw a number of articles that were were criticizing New Relic for this notification, which, it did sound an awful lot like Leslie Nielsen and Naked Gun. The guy rides into the fireworks factory on a missile, it explodes, everything's going off like crazy, and Leslie Nielsen's over here waving his arms. All right, nothing to see here. Please disperse. Everybody leave. It's just, there was nothing there for you to understand, to get any information about what happened. But on December 1st, New Relic did provide more information about what happened and what they've done about it. Now, the updated bulletin says they became aware, in quotes there, around become aware. I'm not sure what that means, if somebody else let them know about it or if they discovered it or what, but they became aware of unauthorized access to their staging environment. And they were able to determine, which doesn't take a huge amount if you have the instrumentation for it, but they're able to determine that this is because of social engineering or stolen creds and social engineering used in an attack. And, again, not surprising. This happens all the time. Their statement about the impact was a little, caused me to kind of blink a little bit there, a little bit dissonant. The third sentence in the bulletin states that telemetry and application data sent to New Relic by customers in the use of their platform was not compromised. So it gets us feel like, okay, no customer data is compromised or anything like that. But then in the fifth sentence, they say the attacker was able to view data about customers' use of New Relic's platform. So I'm not sure what that means. Is that just usage patterns? What customer data had managed to be synced from production to staging, or was this just usage data of customers in staging? Maybe because they're testing things out there. I'm not sure. And there's no information it's not any real clarity around this to figure out what's happening here. They did say any customers who were impacted, they notified. But that's about it. Fortunately for New Relic, it appears they had at least some degree of preparation done before the intrusion took place. According to their bulletin, they activated their incident response program. So they had an incident response program, which is probably better than a lot of places. Don't know how effective the plan was or anything like that, but that's within 2 weeks. They're releasing an overview of what happened here, so they're turning around on this thing at least reasonably quickly, I guess. And then they have their statement about engaging, and this kind of caught me off guard, several third-party cybersecurity experts. And I'm like, okay, is that several consultants who came in when you called, some incident response firm, or was that several incident response firms coming in, which would be a total nightmare scenario as people step on each other's toes? But they decided they got them engaged apparently fairly quickly. Compromised credentials get revoked. They say they implemented other security controls, because of course you do, and eliminated the attack method and accessing the staging environment, which I was like, is that just logging in? What happened there? But they said there's no lateral movement from the staging system to other systems. So hooray, we contained it. But a bit more concerning, they said while they're looking at this, they discovered other activity that was also going on, had similarities or similar IOCs, as they called it, to a small number of customer accounts. And they forced password resets and revoked API keys to cause those to be regenerated. But, which environment? Staging? Production? Sounds like it might have been production, just because they were quick to point out that the staging incident had nothing to do with this, but that's all we can tell. And again, the affected customers were notified directly. They're not saying anything more about this. But, all told, this is pretty typical type of stuff. And at first I was thinking, okay, they're giving some decent information about what happened. But then you realize they're really not giving that much, and their advice on how to protect themselves really raised some questions as well. They basically said, hey, if customers, who are using sign-on capabilities, technologies such as SAML, SSO, SCIM, they should enable MFA. And I was like, wait a minute, only if you can only use MFA if you're using these services. And I did some searching and I found a forum post that said that, only enterprise and pro customers can use MFA. But then as I did some more reading, it appears that really only enterprise and pro customers get access to SAML, SSO, or SCIM. So yeah, you have to use that. In fact, I read a statement where they said, New Relic's platform only supports username and password, username being an email address. And so there you go. You can't, if somebody gets credentials and you're not a pro or enterprise customer, there's no MFA available. There's nothing you can do to really protect yourself against this other than upgrade, I guess. In the end, I started off from reading this. I'm like, okay, this sounds pretty good. They didn't drag their feet a whole lot on it because, it is 2 weeks ago that the intrusion happened, and they're giving some details about what had gone on. And while they were criticized for the November 22nd release, this can be very quickly a situation where you just can't win if you say too much really quickly. Then you're going to get you try and say you don't say anything till you have more information. You're going to get criticized for not releasing the information. If you try and respond quickly without enough information, you get criticized for not providing any information. And so I was like, okay, well, that gets kind of rough, but even, a couple weeks later, so that made me start to feel kind of decent about this. But then a couple of weeks later, they provide this other release that starts to make me ask more questions about the data impacted, actually what they did. They mentioned this other incident over here on the side that also was occurring, but don't worry, they're not related. And what's that about? So yeah, I'm having trouble with the stolen credentials and MFA. Did they not use MFA themselves? What it kind of sounded like to me. Or we have seen examples, of course, where attackers get a hold of credentials and then they use social engineering to get around MFA. So was that the case here or not? Or did they just use social engineering to get the user name and password? The more I read the bulletin and some of their other documentation, the more I ended up with questions about what happened. They did end saying that they're going to provide more information later on, but I'm a little uncertain about how useful this is going to be, because I can just feel the wordsmithing occurring here as they're trying to say, to give out some kind of a notification, but be very careful about what they say at all. It's definitely an exercise in critical reading skill, critical thinking and reading skills on this, because they're, like I said, you get this feeling like things are doing all right, and then you read it a little closer, and the more I read it, the more questions I come away with. So it's something to, I don't know, maybe take a look at. I would recommend anybody anybody out who deals with this sort of stuff to be prepared, think about what it is you're willing to say ahead of time, when you're going to communicate it, things like that, and make sure that you're getting buy-in from the organization. This can get a little squirrely here as you're trying to say something while not saying very much at all. And that's kind of what this feels like in the end. And with that, let's go back over to Santa Doug, see what he's bringing us today to wrap up the show.
I think I'm more like Krampus, Doug. So I'm more like going to put kids in bags and beat them with I don't know, rushes, I think is what it is. Oh, what is it? Birch branches, like something only people in Northern Europe would truly appreciate. So, oh
man, your daughter must have loved Christmas.
Like, here, honey, here's a half-eaten Twinkie. Have fun. It's like, bring daddy another drink. No, it wasn't like that, but it's that kind of fun. Thank you, Jason. And finally, the COVID and post-COVID era pretty much forever changed the workplace and school, in my opinion. Are you wearing and all this stuff actually has happened to me, not me personally, but I've seen it on my cam. Are you wearing see-through underwear or no underwear at all and laying in bed taking a test? Well, why the hell not? That really happened. Does your partner regularly walk out of the doorway behind you during meetings with, just over your left shoulder naked? Of course they do. But, I mean, when we had in-person meetings, there was a kind of protocol to all this stuff, like people would, have some rules and, there was just general decorum and, you tended to wear clothing and things like that. No garlic, anchovy, and onion pizza during the meeting or no durian in your backpack, that kind of stuff. But I mean, now who knows? All bets are off, right? I mean, I guess durian wouldn't bother anybody or all the pizza wouldn't either because you couldn't smell it. Although you could see them eating it, although watching somebody eat durian is not the same thing as smelling it. But this article I put up had a list of etiquette for online office meetings. I thought, to me, it was all just like common sense. But I'm telling you, like wear pants was one of their pieces of advice. And you think, really? But then I was like, oh yeah, I saw a guy jump up when he spilled something. Yep, no pants. He turned over like a coffee cup and he like jumps up. And I think my wife saw one of those too. Or maybe she was just looking at porn. I'm not sure. But I mean, people forget to mute and do the baby talk to their cats. Like, who is Mr. Fuzzy Wuzzy Wigglebottom? Yes. And you're like, your mic's on, John. Your mic's on. But I mean, clean up your background. I've seen a couple of these where the people thought they had a bag, and once where the background actually fell, and all of a sudden you could see this squalid awfulness behind them. But even the virtual backgrounds can sometimes drop out if like a light or a movement or something causes them to change, and then you can see, that there's giant piles of disgusting dishes with cats licking them and old diapers laying around on the counter. Not that's my house or anything like that, but I mean, remember the camera. Don't forget it's on. Like blowing your nose into an exploding Kleenex that ends up looking like an old Bob Guccione lens. Yeah, I saw that one once. It was like, oh, and it was like, oh, really? And the guy's like, I was like, you need a squeegee? Eating is considered kind of rude, but it's like, I mean, people sitting there eating something that even if it's not gross, they're just like, oh, yeah, kind of stuff. Or your dog is having a nervous breakdown in the next room. I did a job interview and the dog was just going, I was like, can you just like give it something? And she's like, oh no, it just does that all day long, every day. And I was like, oh, lovely. And I got to admit, old Dr. G. Remashitis cat used to love to sing his heart out just outside my office. He'd just get out there and just belt out a tune. And, you definitely knew he was doing it. But we probably do need to revisit these protocols. And no, I'm not wearing pants. Thank you very much. Now pass a durian and get out of here. All right, that's the news. Thanks, Jason. We'll see you Friday on the Security Weekly News.